Imagine ordering the same sandwich from your favorite shop every single week for 5 years straight. Same order, same taste, same routine, no questions asked. You'd probably swear under oath that you know exactly what's between that bread. Then, one random Tuesday, you actually flip the menu card over and read the full ingredient list for the first time. Half of what's printed there isn't what you remember signing up for. That's basically what's happening right now to a huge number of people holding one of the most popular dividend ETFs in the country, and most of them have no idea. Before we get into it, a quick heads up. None of this is personalized financial advice, and I don't hold a license to tell you what to do with your own money. Fund makeups shift over time, so always pull the current numbers yourself before acting on anything. Here's the ingredient list almost nobody actually checks. SCHD's two biggest holdings right now are Texas Instruments and Qualcomm, chip makers, hardware companies. Combined, those two names alone soak up more than 11 cents of every dollar sitting inside this ETF. Picture it this way. If you've got $100,000 parked in this position, over 11,000 of it is riding on just two semiconductor companies. Zoom out and the picture gets bigger. Technology as a whole now accounts for almost 18% of this fund's total weight, sitting right alongside healthcare and consumer staples as one of its three biggest pieces. Energy and financials trail behind that. For a fund, a lot of people specifically pick to stay away from chip stocks and hardware names. That's worth sitting with for a second. So how did a dividend fund end up loaded with semiconductor names without anyone announcing it? This is the part that surprises people. This ETF never actually had a rule against technology. People just assumed it did, because for years most hardware and chip companies paid little or nothing in dividends, so they naturally got filtered out by the fund's real screening criteria, which has always centered on cash flow strength and a long growing payout history, not which industry a company happens to belong to. Somewhere along the way, a handful of chip companies matured into genuine cash machines. They started handing out serious, steady-growing dividends year after year, which is exactly what this fund's formula hunts for. Nobody rewrote the rule book. The pool of companies that could pass the test simply changed, and the fund picked up whatever now qualifies. Is that something to celebrate or something to worry about? Honestly, it cuts both directions. These aren't speculative. Money-losing startups riding a hype wave. They're proven, cash-generating companies with real dividend track records, and their strength has genuinely lifted this fund's overall returns lately. You're picking up exposure to one of the best performing corners of the market without giving up the income focus you originally signed up for. The flip side is that semiconductor businesses swing harder than a company selling soda or laundry detergent. Chip demand runs in cycles, climbing fast when the economy is hot and dropping just as fast when it cools off. And those swings show up directly in the stock price. A meaningful slice of your money now sits concentrated in two companies riding the exact same cycle, which means a single rough stretch for the chip industry could weigh on this fund more than it would have a few years back. That's noticeably different risk profile than the steady, boring reputation this ETF built its name on. Now here's the part that actually matters most for your wallet, and almost nobody brings it up. A lot of you also hold a broad market fund, something tracking the S&P 500, specifically because this dividend ETF was supposed to be your counterweight, the piece of your portfolio that wasn't loaded up with hardware and chip names. If this so-called boring holding now carries close to 18% of its weight in technology, that counterweight isn't pulling nearly as much weight as you probably assumed it was. This isn't a signal to panic or sell anything. It's a signal to know your real number. Pull up your S&P 500's fund's tech weighing, add it to what you now know about this one, and look at the combined total across your entire portfolio rather than judging each position on its own. Write that number down. While you're at it, do the same quick math for any other sector fund you hold. Since overlapping exposure can hide in place, you'd never think to look. If it feels heavier than you're comfortable carrying, you can rebalance toward other sectors. If you're genuinely fine with it, that's a perfectly reasonable outcome too. As long as it's a choice you made on purpose instead of a blind spot you never looked at. This matters even more if you're in your 50s or 60s and counting on this kind of income to carry you through retirement. A surprise concentration in any single industry hits differently when you're drawing down a portfolio instead of building one, because you have far less time to recover from a rough stretch in any one sector. Knowing your real exposure isn't just a nice to have at that stage. It's part of protecting the paycheck you're depending on, the one that's supposed to show up reliably whether the broader market is having a good year or a brutal one. Here's the habit that protects you from ever getting blindsided like this again. With this fund or any other one you own, tickers don't change. What's sitting inside them does. The label on the shelf stays exactly the same while the actual contents quietly shift behind it, sometimes for years, without a single headline ever announcing it. Most people form an opinion about a fund once, then never check again, running entirely on a reputation that might be ancient history by the time they finally look. The fix barely costs you any time. Twice a year, pull up the actual current top holdings and sector breakdown straight from the fund provider's own page. Not an old article, not a video from 2 years ago, not your memory of what it used to hold. 5 minutes of looking would have caught this exact shift long before any video had to tell you about it. And that habit applies to absolutely everything you hold for the long haul. Not just this one ticker. Set a reminder on your phone right now if that helps, because good intentions alone rarely survive a busy year. So no, this fund hasn't fully turned into a technology fund. The income-focused, quality-driven strategy underneath it hasn't changed one bit, but it's no longer the zero-tech holding plenty of people still believe they're sitting on. And the two names currently leading the pack make processors, not paper towels. Go flip your own menu card over, check what's actually sitting inside your dividend positions today, then weigh that against everything else you own, because your real combined technology exposure might be running higher than you'd ever guess from glancing at a single ticker in isolation. The same goes for any other ETF, mutual fund, or target date fund sitting in your accounts. They all deserve the same 5-minute check, not just the one we talked about today. Tell me straight in the comments, did you already know your top 2 holdings here were chip companies before today? I read every single comment, so don't hold back. And if you want to catch the exact moment this lineup shifts again, subscribe now so you're not the last person to find out. Appreciate you spending this time with me, and I'll talk to you again very soon.